This is the IBJ podcast for the week of Monday, July 14th, 2025, brought to you by Taft. I'm your host, Mason King. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. We've hit a head-spinning milestone in the history and development of women's basketball in Indiana. This week, Indianapolis is hosting the WNBA All-Star Game and all of its related festivities, coming amid an unprecedented surge in popularity for women's basketball. The top vote-getter for the game is Caitin Clark of the Indiana Fever, a team that now sells out an 18,000-seat arena for nearly every game. The international media is here. Everyone is talking about the potential for player salaries to significantly rise. Exactly 50 years ago, Judi Warren was preparing to enter her senior year at Warsaw High School. She didn't know that she was on the precipice of history. The Indiana High School Athletic Association had officially sanctioned girls basketball, which meant it would have its first statewide girls basketball champion at the end of the season. Warren would end up being a transformational figure in the state's most popular sport, becoming the first Miss Basketball and helping kickstart the rapid growth and evolution of the game for Hoosier girls and women. She's our guest this week to provide a first-hand account of how women who played the game in the early 1970s had to fight for respect, funding, and even decent practice time, and then how quickly attitudes changed after she guided Warsaw to the first state championship. She then became one of the early recipients of a college basketball scholarship, helped nurture talent through basketball camps, and became a coach, returning to the state finals with Carmel High School in 1995. In these ways, she understands the path that has led to this moment as Indy hosts the All-Star Game. She also weighs in on the impact of the WNBA and Caitin Clark in particular. Here's our conversation. It's my pleasure to welcome to the podcast Judi Warren, who has many significant titles and distinctions, but today we'll focus on Indiana's first Miss Basketball in 1976, a member of the first IHSAA Girls Basketball Championship team in 1976, and a member of the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame. Judi, thank you so much for making time today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Was that clear to you at the beginning of your senior year that you and your teammates could be the first ever state champions?
At the start of the season, yes, it was. Kind of in the summer before our senior year, we'd heard that they were definitely going to include basketball in the state tournament series. They had started with volleyball and some other sports, like back in 72, when Birchby had started the Title IX amendment. And so they had started with some of the other sports, but they didn't want to go into basketball right at the beginning because it was such a hotbed for boys basketball. And they wanted to make sure that they got it right and that they didn't mess up basketball in Indiana.
Got it. Let me just go back for a quick second. So did you grow up in the Warsaw area?
Yes. I grew up in Claypool, and a very small town on the south side of Warsaw. And we had consolidated like in my 7th grade year. So I went to Warsaw Middle School and Claypool Elementary, kindergarten through 6th grade.
Okay. What did your parents do?
My father was a plaster and drywaller, and my mother was a stay-at-home mom for many years, but did many odd jobs and ironing and taking care of other people's children and did a lot of things around the house, but was always with us kids. And then once we got into high school, then she went to work for the post office and worked there for many years. My start always began as a love of the game and just being outside. And I was your basic tomboy back then that just was outside all day long playing baseball, football with my brother, basketball, all kinds of sports with the boys.
Got it. So you had a brother?
I have a brother that was 7 years older than I am and a sister that's 3 years older than I am. And my sister liked being inside and helping my mom, and I was outside with my brother. I guess They said when I was born, my brother was very upset because my mom brought home another girl, but little did he know I'd be his best teammate. So it was a lot of fun growing up with him, and my sister and I are very close still. And I would go in and help occasionally in the house when I was begged to come in and help, but most of the time I was outside from morning to night.
So what was it about basketball, or did you like all sports equally?
I played volleyball, badminton, tennis, volleyball, basketball. Played them all, ran track, but back in the days of GAA, the group of girls that were in the GAA just went from one sport to another as it became that season. Um, I enjoyed volleyball. I wasn't as good as in volleyball as I was in basketball. And basketball was really my passion, and even after my brother had graduated and wasn't around the house anymore, I would still be out, like when I was in junior high, and make believing with bushes we had next to the basketball court and throwing the ball up against the chimney and catching it because there was nobody else to play with. So, um, I would make up things and did pretty well faking out the bushes and getting around them. But it was a lot of fun as a kid growing up. And then, when we got the opportunity to play with a lot better players when I went to middle school and had a little bit more choice in players and people to be with, although we were still 9 or 10 miles away from each other and nobody could drive. And even when we got the age to drive, not very many of us had a car. So, trying to get together with them to play during off seasons and in the summer was very difficult, but you'd continue to play with whoever was around or make up your own games and just again dream, but not really dreaming of championships.
I take it that the Warsaw school system was kind of progressive for the time in that there were opportunities for girls to play, organized basketball in elementary school and in junior high, and then on the high school level. And you mentioned the GAA, that was the Girls Athletic Association?
Correct. And it was just a group of girls run usually by the PE teacher that we would get together maybe once or twice a week and play. But then when we also had like outside activities and things that we would do, not just sports wise, that we would do things to help other people. And so it was a great organization, but mostly based around sports. But then the opportunity to start playing against some other teams, we'd play against Concord and Elkhart and Columbia City and teams locally around us. So we'd maybe have 8 games over a season in junior high and high school up until about our junior year. And then we got a few more schools that kind of came on. But as early as 4th grade, um, and I would have played as a 3rd grader, but you couldn't play till 4th grade. But I still got to practice with the teams. So we would play against other schools in the Warsaw community. So the elementary schools even had games back in those days. But many of the players that I played against in college, their teams had not started until maybe even high school. So, yeah, I feel that Warsaw definitely was a hotbed for basketball back then, and it was boys basketball. And I still remember as a little kid going to the games of Claypool versus Leesburg and then getting the opportunity for the Claypool team to play Warsaw in the big school and watching those men play because they were probably 12, 14 years older than I was when I very first started watching them play at that time.
Yeah. So your high school program was already pretty well developed, and your coach, and help me with the pronunciation, is it Jan Soyez?
Soye.
Jan
Soye.
Soye. She'd been there and coaching since 1968.
Yes, she had been there and been our GA leader and volleyball and basketball coach, and she was a great mentor and someone that I looked up to and kind of idolized and wanted to go on and be a PE teacher and coach just because I know how much she meant to me and I wanted to do the same thing and help other kids grow up and have that opportunity. So she was a great inspiration, but she really didn't know that much about basketball. She came from Illinois area, and she admitted that, when she started coaching, she had to watch some tapes and talk to people and read books and because she was not a basketball player herself. And I think that was one great advantage that we had is that we would learn along with her. And she wasn't one that demanded we do it her way. She would let us kind of figure out our own way too. And as I was growing up and in high school, we lived far enough away, and with my parents' job and having only one vehicle and a sister and brother that needed transportation too, I would just stay after school and watch the boys practice. And some of the things that I saw them do in practice, then we would incorporate into our practices.
Oh, that's incredible. Wow, that's a great intelligence gathering.
Well, it was a lot of fun, and I learned a lot, and then I would try and do a lot of those things myself, and the boys had a very good coach at that time, and he was also the athletic director, which in a way didn't really help us get too much for our program because he didn't want to take away from his program, but it was I learned a lot during those years, and I think our team got better because of watching them as well. Our practices were like from 7 to 9 in the evening,
Right.
and
The girls' practices.
the girls practice.
Yeah.
So I would stay after school, watch the boys from like 3 to 5, and then the freshman boys would come in. And during that time, I would usually go across the street. We had a little kind of a quick mart, and I would go over and try and find something to have, a little bit to eat, so that I had enough energy to get me through practice and get to 9 o'clock. So, it was every night kind of doing that same routine. And then when you get home at 9 o'clock, you don't want to have to sit there and do homework. So I would try and get it done during the freshman boys practice. And
That you mentioned the Title IX. So I'm guessing when you were about 13 or 14 years old in 1972, Congress passed what was called the Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972. And as you mentioned, it's a point of pride for Hoosiers because it was drafted by Indiana Senator Birch Bayh. Very short passage. It's 37 words. You don't happen to remember how it goes, do you?
I don't remember all the exact 37 words, but no, I just knew it was for institutions, for colleges and uh, educational purposes to allow the women the same rights. And it was all started pretty much by Birch Bayh's wife, Marvella, who was very instrumental in his thoughts because she was a very bright young woman and had tried to get into the University of, I think it was Virginia, and received notification back from them that no women should apply for academic scholarships or academic entrance into their program. And that kind of set Birch Bayh off a little bit too, and that she would not have the same opportunity as the men had received in developing her educational background and pursuing her love. And so he kind of worked with that. And then he was up in the Bremen area close to Warsaw. So we felt a really kind of a close connection too with him, and got to meet him a couple of times and just thanked him so many times on how awesome it was for us to have that opportunity to play in a state championship.
Okay, let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsor. This is the IBJ podcast.
Taft, today's modern law firm. With more than 800 attorneys in 8 primary Midwest markets and the District of Columbia, we provide solutions to the business issues facing middle market and emerging companies alike. We do this through a highly collaborative and inclusive team approach. Taft, the modern law firm. To learn more, visit taftlaw.com.
All right, we're back with the latest edition of the IBJ podcast. In my interview with Judi Warren about blazing a trail for women's high school basketball in the 1970s. So in 1975, IHSAA sanctions girls basketball. So that's headed into your senior year. What was the difference between your experience playing basketball in your junior year and your experience playing basketball your senior year? Did the sanctions sport make it any different?
Yes, it did. We had gone in, I think it was our junior year, after Title IX had already been instituted, and said to Coach Tallman, and, we said 3 of us had gone in, and one, and Lisa Vandermark, a great teammate of mine, had constructed this letter to him and to the board and asked that we be able to get some equal rights. We wanted equal gym time. We didn't have uniforms. We used to wear just T-shirts, and we'd take tape and put on the front and the back. So we had numbers. And when you're hot and sweaty and those numbers start coming off with that athletic tape, and so, it was just really difficult. We never got any meals. Our managers would maybe pack a sack lunch if it was game day. And so we'd have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and an apple, on the way to the game or after the game. We didn't get shoes. We had nothing other than what we could get for ourselves. And we'd do a few fundraisers here and there so that we could, we would get in cars of parents to travel to the games. So then our senior year, we finally were able to schedule a bus. Sometimes we would take the bus, and except for when we went to the tournaments, the state tournament, we didn't go in the bus because we had a local optometrist in the area that had offered it was a Winnebago, his travel camper for us to go down to the state tournament in. And that was back in the days when you didn't have to wear seat belts and, safety and all that stuff. And to travel all the way to Indianapolis and have a bathroom in the bus, was a big deal. And we could move around, and we just had a great time on the way down to state finals. And then on the way home was even better. But, it was just a different time. And then 2 years later, Warsaw went back and won again in 1978. And Shonda Klein, a sophomore teammate of mine when we won, was named Miss Basketball. And she was a great, great player. But they went back in 78 and won again. And in talking to that team, the difference between 76 and 78 in just those 2 short years, they had tennis shoes, they had buses all the time, they had new uniforms, sweatsuits. We wore the track teams. We thought we couldn't go to the state finals without running out onto the court looking cool in a sweatsuit, jacket and a pair of pants. So our center at that time was dating one of the shot put track stars. And so we talked to the track coach and they let us borrow the track guys. Well, they didn't fit the girls very well, but we looked good. So we kept those on for about the first 2 minutes of the of the warm up, and then brought them back over to the sideline. But it was important to us to look good and look the part and be as equal to the men at that time as we possibly could.
What was your game like? What kind of player were you? How do you describe, your attributes?
My game back then was I was pretty quick and a good ball handler. So mine was a lot of dribbling penetrations and shooting layups. We also had a 6'1" center who could rebound, and she would just throw the ball to the other end, and then I run after it and catch up to it and then shoot a layup. We also had Shonda Klein, who was great at getting inside and had a good leaping ability. And so I would penetrate and try and draw a lot of the defense and then make all kinds of different passes. Not quite as good as Caitin Clark's, but a lot of them a little similar. I would see the floor really well and could distribute the ball to the other players.
How tall were you?
I was 5'1".
Okay. So that's, small even for a girls' basketball team 50 years ago.
Yes. Yeah. I was always the smallest one on the court.
Yeah.
But, that was deceiving too because of the ball handling and the quickness that I had and the court sense in seeing the other players and not too many other players had quite that kind of a game at that time.
So here's what I understand about the championship game. And your opponent was it Bloomfield?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with a little more than a minute to go, it's tied 52-52?
Truthfully, I was not a very good shooter. I hadn't really been taught or spent a lot of time on the basic fundamentals of shooting, but I was good at the layups. So I got to the free throw line and made the first 2 free throws. We got up, 2 points. We come down and they miss a shot. We get a rebound. Kind of the same thing. I'm dribbling around and they're fouling me. And so I go to the line and luckily hit the next 2. And so we're up 4 with, seconds left. And then a girl grabs hold of my jersey and I'm dribbling all the way across the sides of the floor. And they said I charged. And but the girl's hanging on to my jersey as I'm going across, and the officials aren't calling it for a really long time. So they finally do call it. I get to the line and I missed the first free throw, but somebody had jumped into, I think it was a 1-and-1 maybe, and somebody had jumped into the lane too soon. So I got another chance. So I hit the first free throw again and then missed the second one, and time ran out when they got the ball and dribbled down and we win by 5.
That's amazing.
So it was an exciting time. But
So this is Hinkle Fieldhouse, right? This is the cathedral of Indiana basketball. And the crowd was big. It was 7,300 people.
I was thinking that by the final game there were like 10,000.
Okay, there you go.
I may be wrong, 9 or 10,000, but
yeah.
It was, we're used to playing in front of our parents and a few friends, 40, 50 people at the start of the season. And another thing that happened back early on in that senior season was one of that Lisa Vandermark, who was kind of pushing for us to get equal time and very into the women's rights movement. Her father was owned the Ace Hardware, or the hardware store there in Warsaw. And he always used to sponsor the boys having their games being on radio. And she would always have to work during the boys' games, and so would be listening to them on the radio. And she asked her dad one time, why is it that you can put the boys' games on the radio, but you can't do ours? So he started talking to the radio station, and lo and behold, we got on the radio with Rita Price Simpson, who has now just completed 50 years or 50 tournaments of broadcasting the boys and the girls state finals, and still broadcast games in the Warsaw area. And she got her start kind of doing our games, because who else wanted to do women's games? Yeah. So we did have the games on the radio. So that was something, that really happened back in the day because of the first tournament.
Oh, wow. So was the state finals on the radio in Warsaw?
Yes, and it was even televised.
Oh, okay, great.
It was, I think it was, at that time, it was like Channel 4 had televised the games. I believe the morning games, yes, morning games and the evening games. And I heard stories of a lot of people who, were watching it on TV in the morning and said, boy, those girls can really play, and then came out that evening and watched the final games. So, yeah, there were, going from sectionals, start of our sectionals with maybe 100 people at the games, and then going on into regionals and semi-state and state finals. And at that time, we still played 2 games in semi-state, 2 games in state finals. And, they thought women couldn't play, they couldn't withstand the competition and the running up and down the court, and it would hurt our bodies and all of that. So that was reason why they stopped playing back in the 30s and didn't start again until the 60s. So, the opportunities that we saw, that those people before 76 didn't have, the opportunity that we have had to have any important matter.
Okay. So the folks back home had seen the game. What was the reception like when you got back to Warsaw? And this was, I believe, after midnight, right?
We were just frozen for a little while, so I don't know. My end was kind of frozen, so I didn't catch the beginning of your talk.
Oh, sure. So the folks back in Warsaw had seen the game. What was your reception like when you returned to Warsaw in the camper? And we'll note that this was after midnight.
Yes, that was probably the most important part to me of us winning the state championship, was our pep rally when we got back. Going into the state tournament and having talked to Mr. Tallman and knowing that, we weren't going to get a lot of gym time, and the women's game wasn't going to progress that much. We climb in that Winnebago, we're making our way back, and everybody's pretty exhausted. So it was a tiring but yet an exciting drive back to Warsaw, 2-hour trip. We pull into town, and one of the signs that they had on the way out of town said, "Last one out, turn out the lights." And so we're thinking, okay, we're going to get back to the school. And they had announced that we'd have a pep rally. And we're thinking it's midnight and we're going to have maybe a few people, our family and friends will be there to greet us. We start to pull into Warsaw area, and there are cars all along the path, probably for at least 4 or 5 miles getting up to the school, um, with people honking horns and little kids in their pajamas sitting on top of the cars. And again, this is February, late February. It's cold, it's snowy, and we're just not believing that we can see. We have a fire truck escorting us into the school. We get into the school and the gym is packed. And we walk in and they have a microphone out there and they have our coach say a few words. And then they had Ike Tallman, the AD, step up and say a few words. And when he stepped to the mic and he says, "Girls, I see that you can fill the gym now. So we may have to talk about this Title IX and getting some equal rights for your teams from now on." And although it didn't affect, the 4 seniors that were starters on the team, but for Shonda Klein's team as a sophomore and the girls coming up after us, they did get that equal gym time and they were able to have practice after school 2 days a week, one of them being Friday nights because was the boys. We a lot of times got that night because the boys weren't practicing then, they were playing. So we could have the gym on those days. So they did get one other day besides that for the first year. And now, they pretty much have equal time and facilities and extra gyms that they can all practice after school. So what a difference it made for the Warsaw area and hopefully for a lot throughout the state, I'm sure.
Mhm. And then I gather shortly after that, you were named the first Miss Indiana basketball. What did that mean to you at the time?
Well, that was another thing. Again, going into that tournament, we had no expectations. I didn't really even know that they had a mental attitude award winner. And so after we received the trophy for that, they announced that I was also receiving the mental attitude award. And that was a nice honor for me, but it's a team game and I could not have exceeded and or succeeded without all of my teammates' help. And so it was real important that we had that team trophy to me. And then they decided, since the game was such a success, that they would have an Indiana Kentucky All-Star girls program added onto that. And that wasn't decided until like maybe April,
Hmm.
March or April. And then they decided that I was going to be the Miss Basketball. And I didn't really know anything about that either because we, had never been to Indianapolis and to the All-Star Game and all of that. That goes on with that. So, I just received a phone call and said I would be named Miss Basketball and that they were having a game in June and, it'd be 2 weeks. And, so that's what really started a lot of the future for me and where my life has changed dramatically. And, again, not to have similarities to Caitin Clark, but, what she is going through and how much her life has changed in the last 6 or 8 years. And the fact that she's not able to go out anywhere without being recognized. I was kind of going through the same thing, but not quite to the state level extent that she, or the nation, at least. It was some in the state, but everywhere I went, somebody seemed to know me, but I didn't know them. And, you had to really watch where you're going and what you're doing and how you're going to get there. And little girls were idolizing me and getting their hair cut like I had my hair cut. And I'm just a little girl from Claypool, Indiana that hasn't been exposed to all this big city stuff. And so it took me a while to get used to that. And still here I am 50 years later, still trying to get used to it because, they keep calling and asking me to do wonderful things like this. And I feel a responsibility to keep the game going and to give back because the game has been so good to me and giving me so many opportunities that I truly appreciate. And the honor of being state champion, mental attitude award winner, and a Miss Basketball comes along with it a lot of privileges and a lot of opportunities to give back.
So after high school, you went to Franklin College, where you also played basketball. And
I
is
did.
that something? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, I had no idea at that time that I would be continuing on after high school and even playing college basketball. I knew I wanted to teach and coach, and I was pretty well set that I was going to go to Ball State. And it was a great teachers college, and I wanted to go there. I had some friends that were going there. And then I get a call from Ruth Callan, who was the basketball coach at Franklin College. And she said, we saw you play in the state tournament. We'd love for you to come to Franklin College and look it over. And it's a small college, but we are one of 2 colleges in Indiana that give athletic scholarships to women. And having never seen a college basketball game, I really didn't know what to expect. And again, this was April when we're doing this. And so I thought, well, I'll go down and talk to them. And the scholarship sounded great, but it was $1,000 scholarship. So it was still going to cost me more to go to Franklin College than it would to go to Ball State. But when I got there and met the team, and most of those teammates are some of my best friends still 50 years later. And we get together quite often. And the camaraderie we had from the moment I stepped on the campus and the smallness of it. And, it just felt like home. And I'm not sure I would have done as well going to Ball State, where I feel like maybe I would have been lost in the crowd in that area. And, we still had opportunities at Franklin College to play IU and Indiana State and Ball State and the big colleges, as well as Butler University and some of the smaller schools at that time too. The great opportunity to go to Franklin College, get a college scholarship and get a good education at Franklin College, and then be able to go on and get a call from a school to ask if I wanted to come and teach and coach at their school. I didn't even have to send out applications. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go look at this place, and went to South Dearborn and fell in love with that. And coached there for a year, and then moved on to Mechanical, and then got an opportunity because of basketball and working summer camps that had just started for girls up in Tri-State University, which is now Trine. I worked all through college during for 6 weeks at a time at that camp up there, and helped promote a lot of girls into basketball, and it was a great opportunity for me to learn, because I also got to work with a lot of good counselors up there and hone in on my college game a little bit, and then learn a lot from guest speakers that we had coming in and showing examples of how to improve your game. So, those opportunities were not afforded to me when I was growing up, to go to camps or to have summer open gyms or any of those types of things to continue to improve.
Gotcha. And then you ended up also being a teacher and basketball coach at Carmel High School. Is that correct?
So I kind of got to know the Shepherd family quite well, and their father, Bill, who was the basketball coach, and then was the athletic director. Got to meet him, and they had called and wanted to know if I'd be interested in the Carmel job. So I came down and interviewed for the Carmel job, and got to coach here for 12 years in Carmel. I still live in Carmel, and we had great teams in Carmel and did very well. We made it to the semi-state twice, made it to the state final game once in 95, and just had great competition to play against and great girls to coach.
So by 1995, which is when I think you made it to the final game, just 20 years after your championship, how would you say that high school women's basketball had changed by that point, just 20 years later?
Basic fundamentals were really stressed early on, and you saw the players really grasp that a lot better and a lot quicker, so that basic fundamentals were better. The coaching was much, much better. A lot of the people that I coached against had great knowledge and all go to continuing to work summer camps and learn more, and get the opportunity to sit down with those coaches and build friendships and share ideas and strategies, I think was something that really helped the game progress quickly. I had a lot of the guys who realized that the girls were kind of a little bit more attentive and more hungry to learn. And so a lot of the guys who were coaching the boys now became girls coaches. And then once those female players graduated from high school and college, they kind of came back when those old coaches were getting older and older and started getting in a lot more female coaches.
So when you went to the state championship game in 1995, so you're back in Hinkle Fieldhouse.
No, we were playing at Market Square at that time.
Oh, is that right? Okay, great.
Yeah. We no longer got to play it at Hinkle.
What's the difference between playing in a championship game and coaching a championship game?
It was very stressful when I was coaching, and it was a lot of fun when I was playing. You just a lot of times don't have much effect on the game, and not enough timeouts to change things around a little bit, but confidence in the players that were on the court, and we fell just a little bit short. And I think if my best player hadn't have been sick that day, I think she might have had enough to get us over the hump. But we had played Huntington North, who that was the third time in the year that we had played them. And they were just had a great coach in Fred Fields, and I think he outcoached me. So it was my fault that we didn't win that, not the kids.
Yeah. So you retired from coaching in 2000 and retired from teaching in about 2013. So in the meantime, the WNBA launched in 1996. First season started in 1997. The Indiana Fever was founded in 2000 and played downtown here in, I think, what was the brand new Indiana Fieldhouse or Conseco Fieldhouse. You strike me as someone who might have been interested in being a season ticket holder. Did you go to the games?
In the first few years of the Fever organization, I was a season ticket holder for about 4 or 5 years. And I really enjoyed watching the development of the girls and the program over that time. The thing I didn't like is the fact that their season was so short in the summer, and they were playing 2 or 3 games a week, and a lot of them were at home, and it was just hard to get to that many games all that much time and still have time for family and going to my parents who live 2 hours away and helping with the grandkids. And so I stopped going as a season ticket holder and just would go to periodic games. And I had a good friend who kept her season tickets, and
Mm.
sometimes I would go with her and when she didn't have somebody else going. And so, I've followed the Fever all along, and especially, over the Tamika Catchings era. I just thought she is an amazing person and very similar to Caitlin and her philanthropic attitude and giving back constantly to the community and love for kids. And I just admire ones that I know what they have gone through and what time and effort and dedication it takes to give back to those kind of programs. And so seeing Caitin Clark come along and bringing the entire WNBA with him, I just can't understand why some people who are playing in the WNBA don't bow down to her and thank her constantly and want her to play in every single game and don't beat up on her because it's just money in their pockets if they keep her around for as long as they possibly can, because not just young kids like watching her play, but the men have now jumped in and they're starting to see how well the women's game can be played, and kind of going back to basic fundamentals and watching fun basketball instead of bang, 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 bounce somebody down underneath the basket and slam it in the hole. I mean, for these guys who are 7 feet, how hard is it to dunk a basketball? You know, I like the finesse of the women's game still.
How big a deal was it for you to go to those first Fever games in, a very large arena and watch women make a living playing basketball?
It was a lot of fun. I think the progress, the women used to have to go overseas to play, and they still do, to make a decent living. I don't think that's going to happen for too much longer, but hopefully we can keep players in the States and continue leagues and a great salary so that they can have their season and make enough money so they don't have to go overseas to play. But to actually have something here in the States and seeing the teams or the league expand and adding on more teams, I think is a great thing too, that we can look back and say, okay, it's here, it's going to stay. We're going to be able to, make a better brand throughout the whole United States, not just the great state of Indiana.
I think you're a pretty modest person, but do you have any sense of of having a role at the beginning of this sort of evolutionary point in basketball, like these last 50 years, that, you think, I was a significant part of this, especially in Indiana?
People tell me that all the time, but, I was doing what I love. And I think any time that a person finds their passion and continues to work for that passion, no matter what it is, um, you're going to help others to love that game and to love that job and to work hard at that job and be successful. I don't think it's just me. It's what everybody achieves to do, is to have success in the work that they do and be recognized, whether it's the person who's picking up the trash or who's digging a ditch or who's chopping down a tree. Those people deserve respect and recognition for the job they do. And I have truly been blessed with the opportunity to progress basketball, and anything that I have given back has been given to me 100 times over.
Are you planning on going to the All-Star Game next week?
No, I am one that I kind of hate to say it, but I am one that likes to stay home, watch the game on TV, and analyze the game and see the replays and to kind of strategize what I might do differently. And when I'm at the game, there's so many other distractions going on around me, and I don't like fighting crowds, and I don't like sitting up high in the sky and trying to watch it on the screen when I could watch from my screen at home. I am not, but I am participating in something. I'm still not sure. We just got an email today, something going on with several Miss Basketballs that they're having back for a game from 12 to 2 on Saturday, somewhere in the I can't think what it's called. Not the Coliseum, Convention Center.
Oh,
Somewhere,
gotcha.
I think, in the Convention Center. I'm not real sure yet, but and then I did get an opportunity to help out with a little bit with the scavenger hunt that the WNBA, the Fever, and have put on throughout the state this past couple of weeks. So I am very interested, and I'm really excited to see. It's just amazing to me to see these all-stars and all of their abilities, and Asia Wilson's, and there's just so many of them, and Kelsey Mitchell, getting to play, and Aaliyah Boston, and all of the ones coming from the Fever team, along with all of the outsiders that are going to be there. It's just going to be a great game, I'm sure.
Well, I certainly understand how you feel about not wanting to be around a lot of crowds. I think I'll be happy watching it at home as well. Well, hey, this has been a great conversation, Judi. I want to thank you so much for making the time, and thank you for your contributions to the sport.
Thank you, Mason. And again, I appreciate everyone who's followed my career and has led to its success.
My thanks again to Judi Warren. And I wanted to point out that in the latest issue of IBJ, sports columnist Mark Monteith interviews Warren and several other former Indiana Miss Basketballs about strides the sport has made. And there are a few other stories in the features in the issue I want to draw to your attention. First up, Indianapolis leaders and event organizers are in a race against the clock to quell a recent spate of downtown violence before the city hosts the WNBA All-Star Game and Indiana Black Expo summer celebration. Mickey Shuey and Dan Lee dig into the preparations. Also in this week's issue, Daniel Bradley has the skinny on Slick City, the St. Louis-based family entertainment firm that recently slid into Indiana with an action park in Avon, and now has plans for 3 more in the area. And Dave Lindquist takes you inside a home in the Kennedy King area owned by comedian Mike Epps, who has turned it into a shrine to the aesthetics of the 1970s. Again, you can find these stories in the latest print edition of IBJ or online at ibj.com. Now, it is quite a bit easier to access all the latest business news and all of IBJ's data on Central Indiana's business community and economy if you're a subscriber. We're running a promotion right now that gives you complete access for $1 per week for 3 months. Just to get a sense of how valuable and original our content is, just go to ibj.com and click on the subscribe button. And thanks again for making time this week for the IBJ podcast. I'm Mason King. Hang in there, everybody. We'll be back again next week.